All right, you want to really get into it with Augustine of Hippo. This guy, man, a titan of Christian thought. We're talking about someone who went from like a completely pagan upbringing to, leading the church. All while, get this, grappling with some seriously heavy philosophical ideas.
It's really wild, the journey he went on.
Yeah, a wild ride, trust me.
And what I find most captivating about Augustine is how his personal life, is just inseparable from his intellectual evolution. This wasn't just some, ivory tower philosopher just kind of thinking about things in the abstract. He really lived these ideas, wrestled with them, and then ultimately used them to shape his understanding of God.
Exactly. And to really get into Augustine's head, we're going straight to the source.
Yeah.
Excerpts from Augustine's own Confessions.
Oh.
It's like, getting a front row seat to the mind of this, brilliant and, let's be real, sometimes very complicated figure.
His confessions are remarkable for their honesty.
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from anything. He lays bare all of his spiritual and intellectual struggles.
Yeah.
That kind of vulnerability, from someone of his stature.
Yeah.
It's rare and incredibly insightful.
Totally agree. So to kick things off, let's rewind all the way back to Augustine's childhood.
Okay.
And his education.
Yeah.
He was born in Tagaste, which is in modern-day Algeria, back in 354 CE.
Wow.
Can you, picture North Africa during the late Roman Empire? It was, a real melting pot of cultures and beliefs.
Totally. And, his family life just added another layer of complexity to all of that.
Oh, yeah.
His father was a pagan, but his mother, Monica, was a devout Christian.
Whoa.
Talk about a clash of worldviews, right?
Right.
Right from the start.
Yeah, right out the gate.
You can really see how this dynamic, deeply influenced Augustine's early development.
It's like he was, being pulled in two different directions from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And, even as a kid, Augustine's sharp intellect was already shining through.
Oh, absolutely.
He devoured classical Latin literature. Guys like Cicero and Virgil, those were his absolute favorites.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, he was all about it.
That's awesome.
And that, that love of language and that argumentation, that led him to become a teacher, right? A teacher of rhetoric and literature. He was working in places like Carthage, Rome, and Milan.
Wow, he got around.
Yeah, he really did. And he wasn't just some bookworm, right? He was a master communicator, someone who could really break down those complex ideas and make them accessible. That skill definitely shines in his later writings, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got this brilliant young Augustine grappling with this mixed religious background. And he's honing his skills as a teacher and a communicator. But here's where things take a fascinating turn.
Oh, here we go.
He gets drawn to Manichaeism.
Ooh, interesting.
And this wasn't just a minor detour,
Yeah.
This was a radical departure from Christianity.
Well,
So imagine a belief system that saw the universe as this battleground between good and evil,
okay.
with each force having equal power.
Okay.
That's Manichaeism in a nutshell. Pretty intense stuff, right?
Pretty intense. It's almost like can you imagine your kid joining a cult?
Right.
That's kind of what it felt like.
But for Augustine at the time, it makes sense.
Yeah.
He was a seeker.
Yeah.
Driven by this thirst for knowledge and understanding. And Manichaeism, with its very stark worldview and these clear-cut answers, must have seemed so appealing.
Yeah.
Especially considering, that tension between his parents' beliefs.
Absolutely. And he wasn't just a passive follower.
Right.
He fully embraced Manichaeism. We're talking for nearly a decade.
Wow.
However, as his knowledge of astronomy, started to grow, cracks began to appear in those Manichaean convictions. Their interpretations of natural phenomena like eclipses just didn't hold up scientific scrutiny.
So even though he was initially drawn to their ideas, Augustine's intellectual honesty, wouldn't let him ignore those inconsistencies.
Yeah, yeah.
His curiosity was a guiding force. Pushing him to keep searching for that truth, even when it meant questioning his own beliefs.
Exactly. And that questioning spirit led him down another intriguing path, a period of skepticism. This is where Augustine starts doubting the possibility of certain knowledge altogether.
Wow.
It's a classic philosophical dilemma, right?
Yeah.
It's plagued thinkers for centuries.
Oh, sure.
And it shows just how deeply Augustine was engaging with these fundamental questions about knowledge and truth and reality.
So he goes from that, absolute certainty of Manichaeism to, questioning whether we can even truly know anything.
Yeah.
Talk about a philosophical roller coaster.
Right.
But it really underscores that Augustine was a genuine truth seeker, never afraid to follow the evidence wherever it led him.
And that intellectual honesty, it's a big part of what makes him so fascinating to me. He wasn't clinging to, like, comfortable ideas, you know?
No.
He was constantly pushing himself, testing his beliefs, and refining his understanding of the world.
And speaking of refining his understanding, this brings us to another major turning point. His encounter with Neoplatonism in Milan.
Ooh, Neoplatonism.
This was a game changer.
I'm excited. Tell me more.
So Neoplatonism, it's based on the teachings of the philosopher Plotinus, offered a much more like nuanced and philosophical approach to the divine.
Okay.
Instead of Manichaeism's like very stark division between good and evil, you know.
Right.
Neoplatonism saw the universe as like emanating from this single transcendent source of goodness and beauty.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, right. So it's less about this like cosmic battle and more about this, you know, inward journey towards spiritual enlightenment.
I love that.
Yeah. And this idea, it really resonated with Augustine.
Yeah.
It offered a way to reconcile his like philosophical yearnings with his growing, you know, attraction to Christianity. It's almost like he found this bridge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Between that intellectual rigor that he craved and like that spiritual longing that he felt.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Now this is all getting super interesting, but before we like dive any deeper into Neoplatonism and like its impact on Augustine's thinking, we need to acknowledge this other major influence in his life.
Okay, who's that?
His mother, Monica.
Ah,
I
Monica.
can't forget about her.
She was quite a character.
Oh, yeah.
Her unwavering faith and, like, persistent prayers for Augustine's conversion.
Oh, yeah.
Legendary.
Legendary.
She represents this, like, fierce, almost unyielding maternal love. But she also embodies this, like, power of faith to overcome these seemingly, like, insurmountable obstacles.
I mean, she never gave up on him.
No.
Even when he was deep into Manichaeism.
Nope.
Talk about patience and resilience.
That's a mother's love for you.
I can only imagine the conversations that they must have had.
Oh my God, I know.
Did they ever, like, see eye to eye?
Well, their relationship was definitely complex. I mean, there was conflict, especially during Augustine's, you know, Manichaean phase.
Right.
But beneath the surface, there was this, like, really deep bond of love and affection.
Yeah.
And in his Confessions, Augustine even credits his mother with, like, helping him glimpse the beauty of Christian virtue.
It's like a classic mother-son dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Those clashes, the unconditional love, and then that, you know, gradual coming together.
Exactly.
And it's so clear that Monica's influence is woven throughout Augustine's writings. Especially when he, like, reflects back on his childhood and, like, her unwavering faith.
You can really feel the impact she had on him, even if they didn't always agree.
Yeah.
She represented that steadfast belief that he was searching for.
Yeah.
Even as he took those detours through, you know, Manichaeism and skepticism.
So we've got Augustine, immersed in Neoplatonism, still, you know, grappling with his doubts, and deeply influenced by his mother's unwavering faith. This all sets the stage for a pivotal moment.
Here we go.
His conversion to Christianity in a garden in Milan in 386 CE. Now that's what I call a turning point.
Yeah, it's more than just a turning point. It's
Right.
like a seismic shift in the history of Western thought.
Huge.
Augustine's conversion.
Yeah.
It marked the beginning of his theological career.
Okay.
A career that would make him, like, one of the most influential Christian thinkers of all time.
It's pretty crazy to think about, you know?
It is.
Like all of that happening in this Milan garden.
Yeah.
It's like all these intellectual threads,
Yeah.
you know, personal threads,
Right.
all converging,
Yeah.
leading Augustine to embrace Christianity.
Right.
It feels like, you know, a culmination of his entire journey up to that point.
It really does.
And it's like from that point on, he just dedicated his life to exploring like all the intricacies of faith.
Yeah.
Utilizing like all those philosophical tools that he'd acquired through his encounters with Manichaeism and skepticism and Neoplatonism.
It's incredible how those, like, seemingly divergent paths all contributed to his, like, unique perspective.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you think about, like, how our own quote-unquote detours can actually shape our understanding in, like, really profound ways.
Right.
You know, it's not always a straight line.
No, it's not.
Speaking of detours, though, let's dig a little deeper into how those early influences, especially Manichaeism,
Yeah.
continued to shape, like, Augustine's later work, even though he ultimately rejected their worldview. You know, it left a lasting impression on him.
Well, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't just shed a decade of like intense beliefs overnight. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
It's like those ideas, they kind of become part of your intellectual DNA,
Right.
even if you know, end up moving on to these different perspectives.
Totally. Yeah.
So how did those like Manichaean concepts like stick with him?
Well, one key area is in his understanding of evil.
Okay.
Remember, Manichaeism, they had this very like black and white view of good and evil.
Right.
They were like locked in this eternal struggle.
Right.
Almost like, you know, a cosmic tug of war.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
two equal forces battling it out for supremacy.
Yeah, but Christianity, you know, they have a bit of a different take on evil.
Right.
In the more traditional Christian thought, evil isn't this like independent entity.
Yeah.
It's seen as more of like a distortion of good,
Uh-huh.
a falling away from like God's will.
So not like an epic battle between like equals,
Right.
but more like, you know, a deviation from like this perfect source.
Exactly.
Right.
And you can really see Augustine wrestling with these two different ideas
Yeah.
throughout his writings,
Right.
even after his conversion. You know, he
Yeah.
grappled with the problem of evil. Like, how could a good God
Yeah.
allow suffering and sin to exist?
Right.
It's a question that, like, has haunted theologians for centuries.
And it's a question that, I mean, a lot of us still, you know, grapple with today, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like when we're facing hardship or, you know, we're witnessing a tragedy, it's hard to like reconcile those experiences
Right.
with like the idea of this benevolent God.
Yeah, and Augustine's like own struggle with Manichaeism
Oh.
probably like really amplified those questions.
Yeah.
He'd seen firsthand how tempting it was to like see evil
Right.
as this powerful like autonomous force.
Right.
But ultimately, you know, he came to believe that evil is
Yeah.
a twisting of the good,
Yeah.
a turning away from God's light.
So even though he, you know, abandoned like the Manichaean worldview,
Right.
it continued to like shape his approach to this like fundamental theological problem.
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
It's like he brought those early questions
Yeah.
into his new faith
totally.
and used them to dig even deeper,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
And we can see similar echoes of his, like, skeptical phase as well.
Oh, yeah.
Even though he embraced faith, Augustine never lost that, like, critical edge, that willingness to, you know, question assumptions and dig deeper for answers.
So he brought that skeptical mindset into his theological work.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
it is.
You know,
yeah.
you usually think of like faith and skepticism
Right.
as like being at odds with each other.
Right. But Augustine shows us that they don't have to be.
Yeah.
In fact, like a healthy dose of skepticism can actually strengthen faith
Right.
by pushing us to examine our beliefs like more closely
Yeah.
and support them with like reason and evidence.
Right. It's like he's saying,
Yeah.
don't just blindly accept things.
Yeah.
You know?
Ask why.
Yeah.
Ask like, how do we know this is true?
Yeah. How do we know?
Yeah.
And that's an approach, honestly, we could all benefit from, right?
Absolutely.
Whether we're talking about, you know, faith or science or honestly, like anything else, really.
Yeah. And
You know what I mean?
and that intellectual rigor is one of the reasons why, you know, Augustine's work has resonated for so long.
Right.
He doesn't shy away from those like tough questions.
No.
He tackles them head on,
Yeah.
uses logic and philosophy to illuminate like the mysteries of faith.
And that's like where Neoplatonism comes in.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it provided him with those like philosophical tools to grapple with these really complex ideas.
Exactly. Neoplatonism with its like concept of a single transcendent source of all being,
Right.
you know, the one,
Right.
gave Augustine a framework to understand the Christian God.
Uh-huh.
He saw God as the ultimate source of goodness, truth, and beauty. And he
Wow.
used those like Neoplatonic concepts to explain how we as, you know, finite beings
Yeah.
can connect with this infinite God.
Okay, yeah. I'm starting to see like how all these pieces fit together now.
Right.
You know, Manichaeism like ignited this like intense awareness of, you know, the problem of evil.
Yeah.
Skepticism kind of sharpened his like critical thinking skills
Mm-hmm.
and like his demand for evidence, you know?
Right.
And then Neoplatonism provided like the intellectual scaffolding
Yeah.
to like explore those questions within like the context of Christian faith.
You got it. It's like he took the best of each of these like philosophical systems
Right.
and forged a new, like more profound understanding of Christianity.
Right.
One that was both like intellectually sophisticated, but also deeply personal.
Right.
And his confessions are like a testament to that incredible journey.
Yeah, speaking of confessions,
Yeah.
there's this one passage
Okay.
where Augustine, he describes like stealing some pears as a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
Like on the surface, it seems like kind of a random story,
Right.
but it actually reveals a lot about his evolving understanding of like sin and human nature.
That pear story is so fascinating.
It's so
It's
interesting.
just like a, useful prank, right?
Right.
But like Augustine, he like dissects his motivations,
Yeah.
goes deep into the nature of sin, the like allure of transgression,
Right.
and even like the role of friendship in like shaping our choices.
Yeah, it's like he's using this like seemingly minor incident to like unlock something much larger, right? About like who we are as humans,
Exactly.
our capacity for like both good and evil.
And what's striking is how he like connects this teenage escapade to his like later philosophical insights. He talks about how he wasn't like stealing the pears because he actually wanted them.
Right.
He was drawn to like the act of doing something wrong, to the experience of like transgression itself.
That's a pretty profound like observation, I think, for a teenager.
It is.
It's like he was already like wrestling with this idea that evil isn't just about like satisfying a desire.
Right.
It's about choosing to turn away from what's good for its own sake.
Yeah, exactly. And this idea that, he first kind of explores through this like simple act of stealing these pears becomes like a recurring theme in his later theological works.
Oh, wow.
He argues that, sin is ultimately a turning away from God, a choosing of lesser things over the ultimate good.
It's amazing how like that like seemingly insignificant teenage experience, like foreshadows like some of his most important theological ideas.
It really does.
It makes me wonder how our own like pear moments, those like seemingly small experiences might be like shaping our understanding of the world.
Totally.
Even if we don't fully realize it yet.
It's a really intriguing question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're all products of our experiences.
Yeah.
Big and small.
Totally.
And like Augustine's Confessions,
yeah,
they remind us to be mindful of those experiences, to reflect on them, and to see how they might be, shaping our perspectives.
Now, we can't talk about Augustine without bringing Monica back into the conversation.
Oh,
right?
of course not.
We've touched on her influence.
Yeah.
But her role in his life deserves a lot more attention. She was a true force to be reckoned with. Monica's like unwavering faith and like persistent prayers for Augustine's conversion.
Yeah.
They're legendary.
They are. She represents this like fierce, almost unrelenting maternal love, but she also embodies the power of faith to overcome even the most like challenging obstacle.
She never gave up on him.
Nope.
Even during his Manichaean phase. I mean, that must have taken
I know.
incredible patience and strength.
It certainly did.
Yeah.
And her story is a powerful reminder that, sometimes the greatest influence we can have on others comes not from lectures or arguments, but from like the quiet power of our own example. It's about living our values and letting our actions, speak louder than words.
Right. It's like she was showing him the beauty of Christianity through her life.
Yeah.
Even when he wasn't ready to see it.
Exactly. Just kind of like being that example.
It's a powerful testament to the impact of like genuine lived faith.
It is. And eventually her persistence paid off.
Yeah.
Augustine's conversion was in many ways like a tribute to Monica's unwavering faith and her like constant prayers for his salvation.
But their relationship, it went beyond like religious conversion.
Yeah.
Right?
It did.
It was about like love and acceptance and ultimately forgiveness.
You're right. Augustine talks about how like Monica was there for him through like thick and thin, his intellectual wanderings, his like moral failings, all of it. She challenged him, yes, but she also loved him unconditionally.
Right.
And that kind of love can be truly transformative. It creates a space for like growth and change, for self-discovery and acceptance.
It makes me think about the people in my own life, who have shown me that kind of like unconditional love and support, like the people who have stood by me through good times and bad, who have like believed in me even when I doubted myself.
Those relationships are invaluable.
Yeah,
they shape us. They help us become our best selves. And like Augustine's relationship with Monica is a beautiful example of the enduring power of those bonds.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Augustine's like intellectual evolution, his conversion, the influences of Manichaeism, skepticism, and Neoplatonism,
Yeah.
and his like profound relationship with his mother Monica.
Right.
It's been a deep dive for sure.
It really has.
But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to his Confessions one last time.
Okay.
Like, what is it about this work
Yeah.
that continues to like resonate with readers centuries later?
Right.
Why should we in the 21st century care about like the spiritual struggles of a 4th century bishop?
It's a great question.
It is a great question.
Yeah.
And I think the answer kind of lies in Augustine's like raw honesty,
Yeah.
like his willingness to lay it all bare, like his doubts,
Yeah.
desires,
Right.
flaws, like everything.
Everything.
He's not afraid to show us like his humanity,
Right.
even the messy, complicated parts.
He doesn't try to present himself as like this perfect saintly figure
Right,
who had it all figured out.
right. No.
He's just a man
Yeah.
wrestling with like big questions,
Yeah.
making mistakes, and constantly searching for truth.
And there's something so relatable about that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We all have those like moments of doubt, those, inner struggles,
Yeah.
those times when we like feel lost and uncertain.
Totally.
And Augustine's Confessions, they remind us that like we're not alone in those experiences.
Right.
Even a brilliant theologian like him
Yeah.
wrestled with like these fundamental questions of, faith, meaning.
Purpose. Absolutely. We're all on this journey together.
You are.
Yeah.
And that's what makes his work so timeless, I think.
It is.
It speaks to like something deep within us,
Yeah.
to this like universal human experience of, searching for something bigger than ourselves,
Totally.
something to believe in, something to like give our lives meaning.
And Augustine shows us that like the search itself is valuable.
Right.
Even if the path is like winding and we don't always have the answers.
Yeah.
It's about the journey, the process of like seeking and discovering.
It's okay to not have it all figured out.
Yeah. Embrace the mystery.
Totally.
Yeah.
Embrace the
He encourages us to like embrace that journey.
Yeah.
To be open to like new ideas.
Uh-huh.
To like question our assumptions.
Yeah.
And to never stop searching for truth wherever it may lead us.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And it's, one that's just as relevant today as it was in Augustine's time.
No, absolutely.
It's a message that like invites us to look inward, examine our own beliefs.
Right.
And like embark on our own intellectual and spiritual journeys.
Yeah, it really is a powerful message. And what's like fascinating, I think, is how Augustine's own journey kind of embodies those themes, like that intellectual curiosity and spiritual exploration. He could have easily just stayed within like the comfortable confines of his upbringing.
Yeah.
Accepting those pagan beliefs of his father or the like traditional Christianity of his mother.
Right.
But that wasn't Augustine.
No.
He wasn't content with those like easy answers.
Yeah.
He was driven to venture out, explore, all these different philosophies, wrestle with those like tough questions, and ultimately like forge his own unique path.
And that path, it was far from, straightforward.
It really wasn't.
He like stumbled and doubted himself, and he faced like, harsh criticism for his like unconventional views.
Yeah.
But he never stopped searching, learning, refining his understanding of like God and the world.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
It is. It's like even facing all those challenges, he never lost that thirst for knowledge.
And, his confessions, they serve as an invitation, I think, for all of us to do the same.
Totally.
They're not just like a historical account of this one man's conversion.
Right.
They're like a guidebook, I think, for anyone, who's seeking meaning and purpose in their own lives.
They remind us that like, it's okay to ask those, difficult questions.
Yes.
To like challenge the status quo and embrace that like messy, sometimes, chaotic nature of the intellectual and spiritual journey.
Exactly. It's not about having all the answers, neatly packaged and like tied with a bow.
Right.
It's about the process of like growth, of self-discovery, of constantly striving to understand ourselves and the world around us.
And Augustine's life, I think it's such a powerful testament to that like transformative potential of that kind of like intellectual and spiritual engagement.
It is.
He went from like this restless seeker to like one of the pillars of Christian thought, shaping the course of like Western philosophy and theology for centuries to come.
It really makes you pause and like reflect on, the impact that one person's journey can have on the world. It's astounding.
It does make you wonder, what if Augustine had never questioned his beliefs?
Right.
Never explored those other philosophies, never like wrestled with those doubts?
Yeah.
Would the history of Christianity like have unfolded differently?
It's a thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
It underscores, I think, the significance of individual journeys and the impact that each of us can have.
We may not like all become, influential theologians like Augustine.
Right.
But we can all, I think, draw inspiration from his example of like intellectual courage, that spiritual honesty, and that like relentless pursuit of truth.
So as you continue to like explore Augustine's work, remember those core principles.
Yeah.
Don't shy away from asking those questions, challenging your own assumptions.
Right.
And embracing, the complexities of your own intellectual and spiritual journey.
Because it's in those moments, right?
Yeah.
Like when we're wrestling with ideas, confronting those doubts, seeking a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world, that we truly like grow and evolve.
Who knows? Maybe like your journey, like Augustine's, will lead to insights that shape the world in ways you never even imagined possible.
It's a really cool thought.
It is.
Yeah.
It all starts with, that willingness to like dive deep, to question, to seek, and to never stop exploring.
That's a great note to end on. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on this deep dive into Augustine of Hippo.
This was fun.
I'm so glad you were here to like guide us through, Augustine's life and ideas and confessions. It's been a real pleasure having you.
Well, thank you for having me.
And for all of you listening out there, keep those questions coming and keep exploring those big ideas. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.